Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom, warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in 1,000,000 eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now we begin teaching on generating bodhicitta. We're teaching on generating bodhicitta among the uncommon preliminaries, having completed the section on refuge. Generating bodhicitta is extremely important for all of us here. Indeed, the power of bodhicitta and its merits cannot be expressed in words. Therefore, I believe that all of us here studying and listening together are extremely fortunate to have such extraordinary karmic connections. Otherwise, such precious teachings would be impossible to obtain, impossible to have the opportunity to practice together. Therefore, each person should practice with an extremely joyful heart. Because bodhicitta, we can say, in this entire world, among all thoughts and all practices, is supremely special. For example, our offerings to the Buddha are also obtained through bodhicitta, as mentioned in the Great Men Shastra. Those who wish to make offerings to all Buddhas should generate bodhicitta. Those who wish to repay the Buddha's kindness should generate unwavering bodhicitta. All of us here certainly often think that having today's happiness and opportunities is due to the Buddha's blessings. For millions of eons, the Buddha has created this power for us. We must repay the Buddha's kindness, our teacher's kindness, and the kindness of all beings. This comes from bodhicitta. We must have a grateful heart to repay kindness. Cultivating bodhicitta is the most sublime method, so I believe that in the essence of Buddhism, we must emphasize bodhicitta. Without bodhicitta, even the highest Vajrayana practices cannot be considered supremely special. I remember, it's also mentioned in A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher that without the support of bodhicitta, even 9 years of retreat with doors sealed shut with mud, 9 years of retreat actually has little meaning. Therefore, the Buddha once, as recorded in the older Sutra of Parables, the Buddha was once under a tree when many Shravaka Arhats were attaining fruition. At that time, the Buddha appeared particularly unhappy, his countenance not so dignified, appearing sorrowful. His attendants then asked why the Buddha appeared so displeased. The Buddha replied, "The teachings I've created and obtained over millions of eons now seem to have no real effect, like a person with a completely naked body. Without truly serving its purpose, how could there be joy?" The attendants asked, "Haven't many Arhat Shravakas already attained fruition? Why aren't you happy?" The Buddha said, "For example, if a family gives birth only to daughters and not a single son, the family lineage cannot continue. Similarly, if my Dharma family consists only of Shravaka Arhats, it's impossible to maintain and preserve the Dharma forever." At this point, the Buddha manifestly shed 3 tears. This moved the entire world, and the earth shook. Humans, non-humans, celestial beings, many sentient beings generated supreme bodhicitta. After generating supreme bodhicitta, the Buddha began manifesting his wonderful appearance and joy. Only then did he say, "My teachings, my Dharma, have now truly manifested their meaning." So from this story, we can see that any virtue not supported by bodhicitta, even the Shravaka Arhat practices that liberate one from the 3 realms of samsara, their cultivation is not considered especially sublime. So whether in Han regions or Tibetan areas, I sometimes feel that although there are those who meditate, worship Buddha, and burn incense in Tibetan areas too, there are often some who recite scriptures and perform meritorious deeds. But most do so for their own benefit. Those who truly practice virtue for all beings in the world to attain perfect Buddhahood with such a goal are extremely rare. Therefore, we must first have a very clear understanding of the importance and merit of bodhicitta to support our learning. Now let's enter the main text. First, Patrul Rinpoche praises his root guru. With great wisdom, you have realized supreme nirvana. With great compassion, you dwell in samsara. With skillful means, you've realized the non-duality of samsara and nirvana. I bow at the feet of my incomparable guru. Each instruction begins with such a verse. This means that my root guru, Patrul Rinpoche's guru at that time, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu and others, with great wisdom, have already realized nirvana, truly attaining perfect enlightenment as taught in the Prajna Paramita. Yet with great compassion they still appear before us in human form, dwelling in the three realms of samsara in various forms to liberate countless sentient beings. This manifests through great compassion. Dwelling in samsara is not out of selfish attachment, but completely through skillful means, according to each being's capacity and inclination, teaching skillful dharma in all aspects to help them achieve true liberation, while also enabling them to realize the non-dual state of samsara and nirvana. Such gurus are extremely rare and incomparable in this world. Before such incomparable gurus, author Patrul Rinpoche respectfully prostrates. Now, all of us here should prostrate to author Patrul Rinpoche and all lineage gurus, all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and lineage gurus who have shown us infinite kindness with reverent hearts. We should begin all our studies with prostration. When cultivating bodhicitta, it's best to first prostrate to the guru by reciting this verse 3 times. In some traditions, some gurus when cultivating bodhicitta first begin by praying 3 times, prostrating 3 times, using this phrase for practice. In our future practice, we should also frequently, if conditions are favorable, recite this 3 times and then pray to the guru. Indeed, our lineage gurus have especially sublime bodhicitta in their mind streams. When we pray, our mind streams will surely be nourished and transformed. If we don't pray, although wish-fulfilling jewels have limitless merits, without requests from those with connections, they cannot grant desires. Praying with reverence before the guru and 3 jewels, frequently requesting with reverence, is extremely necessary. Therefore, in our practice, we cannot rely completely on theoretical knowledge. We must know that besides theory, in our faith, there are many inconceivable, profound, and vast domains. We must understand this, because some people in today's world consider scholarship or specializing in theoretical exploration daily as only rational reasoning. Beyond our senses, they don't really accept profound so-called blessings or powers. This is also an extreme view, so we must frequently pray. Next, we'll truly teach on entering the Mahayana path of generating bodhicitta in 3 parts. First, cultivating the 4 immeasurables. Second, generating supreme bodhicitta. Third, the trainings of aspiration and application bodhicitta. First, let's discuss cultivating the 4 immeasurables. Cultivating immeasurable equanimity, loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. Today we'll teach the 4 immeasurables and their complete cultivation sequence. This is also explained in The Great Chariot, a commentary on finding rest in the nature of the mind. Originally, many lineage gurus teach loving kindness, compassion, joy, then equanimity, first cultivating loving kindness, then compassion, then joy, and equanimity last. But Patrul Rinpoche, following Venerable Longchenpa and other lineage masters' instructions, has a somewhat different sequence. What's the reason? It's explained here. Originally, among the immeasurable hearts of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, we should begin by teaching loving kindness first. But here, from the perspective of actual practice, when we should practice in sequence, if we haven't first cultivated equanimity, loving kindness and compassion will be biased. Specific details are also explained in The Great Chariot, because we must first treat self and others equally. If self and others aren't equal, when we begin wanting all beings to achieve the greatest, for example, immeasurable loving kindness means wanting all beings to have happiness. But before friends and enemies are equal, wishing them happiness is very difficult. So indeed, Patrul Rinpoche's pith instructions have very special qualities. Without achieving complete purity, we must begin by cultivating equanimity first. This is very important. Otherwise, you see, when first cultivating loving kindness, there are certain difficulties. Cultivating compassion means wishing all beings to be free from suffering, away from pain. But being free from suffering, because initially you haven't cultivated equanimity well. If equanimity isn't cultivated well, the relationship between beings and myself hasn't been resolved. Among beings, there are also neutral ones who are completely indifferent to me, and some with whom I have bad relationships, hateful enemies. For me to comfort them with the greatest sincerity would be quite difficult. So first, cultivating equanimity is especially important. Next, we'll begin cultivating equanimity. First, cultivating immeasurable equanimity. I think this passage mainly discusses the relationship between friends and enemies. When cultivating, you must first understand what kind of relationship truly exists between relatives and those we hate. This must be understood clearly. Here it also explains that so-called equanimity means abandoning hatred toward enemies and attachment to loved ones, maintaining equanimity toward all beings without bias or preference. We need to cultivate this so-called equanimity, but we're not like this now. Toward our dear friends and relatives, we have attachment, while toward hateful enemies and creditors, we have aversion and hatred. When we practice now, we should abandon hatred toward enemies and attachment to loved ones, treating all beings just as the Buddha did in his causal stage, whether praised or harmed, maintaining no attachment or hatred whatsoever. We should develop complete equanimity. Of course, this is extremely difficult for us initially, but actually, truly being able to generate such equanimity is especially important. So, the sutra expounded to Mahasatya Nirgrantha also states, one who can maintain compassionate equanimity toward enemies and loved ones alike, such a bodhisattva is truly generating bodhicitta. I believe it's something like this. If among friends and enemies our compassion can nourish and we can truly practice bodhicitta and equanimity, then such bodhisattvas have truly generated bodhicitta. So for us now, equality between friends and enemies, to truly nourish everyone with great compassion and equanimity is not so easy for us now. But to truly practice such dharma, to achieve this, I think when we now cultivate bodhicitta, the greatest difficulty is our inability to treat friends and enemies equally. In the cultivation process, everyone must repeatedly contemplate and practice. Our habits and tendencies from beginningless time are quite unwholesome. Most ordinary beings are extremely attached to present life parents, relatives and friends on their side, while feeling unbearable hatred toward enemies and other beings. But actually, this is caused by great faults from lack of investigation. Toward loved ones, as taught in the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, we have attachment like boiling water, while toward hateful enemies, we have hatred like blazing fire. Such mentality actually arises from the fault of not examining carefully for a very long time, from not investigating properly. Actually, the Buddha teaches in the sutras, teachers, parents, and all categories of beings, between friends and enemies, the heart should be equal. Their kindness is without difference. This should be from Sutra of the Buddha's skillful means in repaying kindness. What this sutra teaches is that all teachers, parents, and other categories of worldly beings, when we truly investigate with reasoning, friends and enemies should be treated equally. Moreover, the kindness and benefits they bring us have no real difference. Other beings enable me to achieve the causes of Buddhahood, while parents and teachers can also bring me the true causes of Buddhahood. So I think we must have this kind of equanimity toward all friends and enemies. This is extremely important. Actually, today's enemies in past lives throughout countless lifetimes have also been our loved ones, treating each other with respect, love, and harmony. The benefit they've provided is unimaginable. We now feel these hateful enemies have bad relationships with me, but in past lives throughout countless lifetimes, they indeed treated me very well. While those now considered loved ones in past countless lifetimes, many have also been my enemies, continuously harming me. So the relationships between us and friends versus enemies, many people haven't truly clarified this issue. We now think, these are my parents, children, relatives. These people have harmed me countless times since beginningless time. We now think, these are my hateful enemies. They have shown me kindness since beginningless time. This lifetime's mutual revenge has made things this way. So sometimes, what we ourselves think is completely wrong. Everyone should contemplate well using reasoning. Next, we'll use stories to illustrate these 2 points, explaining why friends and enemies are equal using stories. First, as we discussed before, noble Katyayana said, eating his father's flesh, beating his mother, embracing the enemy who killed him, his wife, gnawing her husband's bones, the ways of samsara are truly wondrous. I've already explained this story extensively before, so I won't elaborate here. I remember in the Dhammapada Sutra of Parables, there's another story quite similar to this one, which I think I've discussed before. This also tells of how the Buddha was staying somewhere where a local family had an extremely stingy husband. Sometimes when they killed a chicken, they would close all the doors to eat with his wife and feed their household children. While eating, the Buddha knew the conditions were ripe to guide him, so he manifested miraculous powers and entered despite the closed doors. After entering, while this family was preparing to eat chicken, a monk appeared. They were very unhappy, especially the husband, who began scolding harshly. "How shameless you are! What a person without shame! While we're eating here, we didn't invite you in, yet you've entered." At this point, the Buddha also said, "You kill your father, marry your mother, feed your enemy, yet don't know shame. How dare you call this monk shameless?" Meaning that actually the chicken this donor killed was his own father, while his wife was actually his former mother, and the child he was feeding was his former enemy. He was indeed a shameless person, yet he dared call this monk shameless. This was completely due to not understanding proper relationships. Therefore, the Buddha told him this and gradually guided this being. The story discussed here, I feel, is basically the same as this story from the Buddha's sutras. Such phenomena are quite numerous. In Alaska, America, there was someone called Potter who was born in 1907. At age 2, he completely knew what his past life was like. His past life was as a Native American who was killed by someone on the battlefield. That killer, after a very long time, had now become his great-uncle, his mother's uncle. These two, the killer and the killed, had become part of the same family, living together. There was also another case in America or somewhere of a Dr. Mario, who specialized in investigating through hypnosis and various methods, finding over 1,000 examples of people who could recall their past lives. Among them was someone called Speck, a very famous Swiss person. When she was 49, her husband died, but on the day he died, a small parrot was born. She gradually raised this parrot, and after it grew up, her husband had been called Amy. She gave it a different name, but it wouldn't listen to her. It said, "My name is Amy, my name is Amy." At first, many people didn't believe it. When many news reporters came to interview and investigate, it was completely confirmed that this parrot was her husband. Moreover, this parrot could completely recall and know what its birthday was like, and many human sensitivities and emotions were completely manifested through its body. So now, in our world, of course, these very mysterious stories of death and rebirth cannot be discovered in every person. But actually among different peoples and different countries, there are very many such cases now. So we should know that regarding friends and enemies, we especially cling to our families. When family members die, we cry. But if our hateful enemies die, we laugh. This is our particularly upside-down attachment. But people are very foolish and never understand. I heard tomorrow is April Fool's Day. On April Fool's Day, many people often use deceptive methods and create negative karma. So many of us humans are already quite foolish. We don't need to add an April Fool's Day. This exists in the West, but now Han regions have this too, so I fear that Tibetan areas might also have such holidays appear. It's unnecessary. Many foolish and upside-down phenomena are quite numerous in this world. This is one story. There's another story about Princess Pema Sal. Long ago, when Padmasambhava was in this world, Dharma King Trisong Detsen had a daughter called Princess Pema Sal. When she was 17, she suddenly departed from this world. The princess was very beautiful and quite intelligent, but later, once when Padmasambhava was in retreat at Samye-Chimpu, Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal was also in retreat in different caves. During the retreat, one day in the afternoon, suddenly the princess had something like gastric bleeding, in today's terms, perhaps such a stomach illness. After falling ill, the king ordered people to take the princess, she may have passed away en route, to Padmasambhava. At that time, Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal was also in retreat, and in her meditative experiences, various different signs appeared. It seemed Guru Rinpoche requested her to come over too. When she suddenly went there were 1 or 2 horses at the cave entrance. The king and those accompanying the princess had all arrived there. By evening, the princess had already left this world and her body was placed. Have you seen this? You've seen it, right? Yes, on a stone. Her remains were placed on that stone. Then, before Padmasambhava, when she saw this scene, Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal was especially shocked and anxious. When the king knew his beloved princess had left this world, he was extremely anguished and fainted to the ground. Then, Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal asked what the cause of her illness was. Padmasambhava said, "Now that the person has departed, asking these things is meaningless. Quickly help the king up." The Dakini used white silk to gradually help the king up and comfort him. Then Padmasambhava first taught the king some dharma. All phenomena are impermanent. Every person, some die young, some die old, will depart and die. But when we leave this world, dharma is most important. You have no need to be sorrowful. In Buddhist principles, you should know that everything is impermanent. Not only your princess manifests this impermanence, but at a certain time, you too will leave this world, and so forth. After teaching much about impermanence, King Trisong Detsen's mood somewhat recovered. He began asking Padmasambhava Rinpoche, "Padmasambhava, what you've taught is indeed true. I now understand many principles, but my daughter, Princess Pema Sal, should be considered one with pure karma, because she was born as the daughter of me, King Trisong Detsen. Moreover, she had the opportunity to meet someone truly like Buddha, Padmasambhava, as well as many panditas and great translators from India, but her lifespan was so short. Why was her life so brief? What kind of karma caused this?" He thought she was very fortunate to be born into my lineage. As the daughter of such an amazing king like me, that's very fortunate. She also met so many great masters like you all. This too was very fortunate, but her life was too brief. You see, when a princess suddenly departs at 17, we generally can't imagine such a thing. It's extremely regrettable. He asked this question. Then Padmasambhava answered his question. This text doesn't include everything. I remember there's another section that says, why was her life so short? There's still a reason. Princess Pema Sal's past life. At that time, she was actually a king called Pang Mifan Gompo in a city called Karma in eastern India. King Pang Mifan Gompo had 2 queens. Princess Pema Sal's past life was then his senior queen, the great queen. We can't say old if she's old. The king surely wouldn't be happy or fond of her. His great queen had no children, but later he had a junior queen who bore a prince. Later, the great queen became unhappy and through various methods killed this child. Due to this karma, because we know killing leads to short life, in this lifetime she lived only briefly as the karmic result. This is the first reason for her short life. As for the king, thinking she was fortunate to be born into my lineage, actually being born into your lineage wasn't due to some excellent karma that made her your daughter. The relationship between you isn't like that. He then explained further. Actually, your daughter, Princess Pema Sal, wasn't born as your princess due to pure past karma, but because previously I, Padmasambhava, you, Sovereign Trisong Detsen, and Bodhisattva Shantarakshita, we 3 had taken birth as 3 sons of a poor family. At that time, we 3 were building the great stupa of Jarung Kashor in Nepal. Princess Pema Sal was then reborn as a poisonous bee. It stung into the small blood vessels in your neck area. Then you unconsciously wiped it with your hand and crushed this poisonous bee to death. It was precisely due to that life debt that she was born as your princess. After he spoke these words, Trisong Detsen had gained understanding. From this story, we also understand the relationship between Trisong Detsen and the princess. It wasn't because of good fortune that they were born as father and daughter. It wasn't like that. Indeed, unconsciously at that time, he killed this poisonous bee. We too might sometimes unconsciously crush some insects on our bodies. Sometimes I hear that some people intentionally kill living beings. The other day I heard about a Buddhist who outwardly often says, "I practice Dzogchen," which is excellent, how wonderful, and so forth. He often tells others this, but in his daily life he especially loves killing mosquitoes. Someone told me he would drive, and when he saw mosquitoes flying in the car, he would immediately swat one, then continue driving. For us as Buddhists, if we really act this way, it's particularly ridiculous and very unreasonable. Look, unconsciously crushing a poisonous bee eventually made it become his child, causing him various kinds of suffering. If we intentionally kill it, what kind of life debt would result should be clear. Everyone should understand this story. When Princess Pema Sal passed away, Padmasambhava first recited prayers for her. Later, because Princess Pema Sal's past lives were I've taught about these before, I won't explain them here today. At that time, Padmasambhava used some tantric summoning methods. Although the person had already left this world, after leaving this world, Padmasambhava summoned her consciousness back into the body. Then he marked her 3 places with the 3 syllables Oma Hum. At this point, Princess Pema Sal began to revive. After reviving, Padmasambhava gave her empowerments and transmitted secret teachings to her. He made termas in her heart, not like we normally do by burying a treasure vase in the ground, but through a blessed method, hiding all the teachings in her heart. Then he had her make aspirations to become Venerable Longchenpa in her next life and open the door to these termas. Later, Venerable Longchenpa could also recall his past life with Padmasambhava. So in all his works he writes, "Great kindness Urgyen Padmasambhava Sambhava." He revealed Khandro Nyingtik from the 4 parts of the heart essence. Khandro Nyingtik was what Padmasambhava taught and empowered her with at that time. In Princess Pema Sal's later life as Venerable Longchenpa, he began revealing Khandro Nyingtik from the 4 parts of the heart essence. Many Dharma friends here, His Holiness Jigme Punsok Rinpoche specially transmitted this before. We've also taught and practiced parts of it. It continues to be transmitted in this world. Finally, when Venerable Longchenpa manifested parinirvana, he also said, "I, Princess Pema Sal, do not wish to remain in this world. Now I go to other pure lands." Finally, when he was approaching parinirvana, this is recorded in the brief biography of the omniscient Longchenpa that I translated. So these relationships, whether noble beings or ordinary people, in the long process of life and death in samsara, there are truly many deeply moving stories. Sometimes they seem very joyful, but sometimes truly. When we think about some stories of samsara, they feel very sad, especially some stories about Princess Pema Sal. I may have other things to tell, but there's no need to explain them here. It says here that actually King Trisong Detsen was truly Bodhisattva Manjushri, yet he also had descendants born from such karmic debts. How much more so for people like us? We all know that we truly have very heavy and numerous karmas. Actually, such stories aren't only from Tibetan areas. I remember in Han regions, in the biographies of the 5 patriarchs of Huayan, it tells of Master Dushan of the Tang dynasty. When Master Dushan went to a family where they had just had a child and were very joyful, the monk didn't appear very happy and said, "This isn't truly a lovable child for your family. Originally, he was your enemy." But they didn't quite believe it. Later, the monk threw their child into the river. The family was extremely anguished and prepared to confront the monk. How to express this? Yes, like that. At this point, it seemed the child died in the water or something. Then a very tall person appeared in the water and said, "I was originally your hateful enemy. Before, you didn't repay the money you owed me, so I was preparing to collect this debt. But if it weren't for this monk this time, I would never be finished with you." After saying this, he disappeared. Only then did they understand that actually, children in their own family aren't necessarily loved ones. There was also a wealthy man in Han regions who had 2 sons. One was extremely filial, daily showing filial piety to his parents through various means. while the other spent his days in debauchery, harming his parents. Later, suddenly one day, both had suddenly left this world. After leaving this world, the father was extremely anguished and also fainted. During his unconsciousness, he suddenly arrived at the realm of the Dharmaraja. Through the Dharmaraja's summoning power, these two children came to the intermediate state. When they arrived at the intermediate state, he was very happy and said, "I should take you back to the human realm." The filial child said, "I won't return. I needed to repay some kindness to you. 3 years of kindness. I've already repaid it completely through various means. I don't want to go to the human realm." The unfilial child said, "I came specifically to collect a debt. The debt has been repaid. What should have been stolen from the family was stolen. What should have been robbed was robbed. It's all repaid. I won't return either." Later, when this person truly came back to life, he understood some truths about life, death, and rebirth. So some people, including some of our monastics, when family relatives and friends truly die or fall ill, having just finished studying Mahayana Buddhism and immeasurable equanimity, if upon hearing that someone at home is ill or dead, they cry extremely sorrowfully, it shows these principles haven't been cultivated well. If some people have truly cultivated well, outwardly not conforming with family members may seem unreasonable, but inwardly, toward family members, worldly people might think them particularly heartless. But actually, such emotional attachment has no real meaning, so we should understand these two stories. Such relationships, actually clinging to them, has no substantial meaning. Next, let's discuss the reasons for equality between friends and enemies. There are certain reasons for this equality. Now, we people have blood relationships with our parents. Their care and love for us is unimaginable, because in this lifetime, our parents and relatives love us especially deeply. When we suffer some pain or misfortune, they are sadder than if such things happened to themselves. Actually, this is completely due to past karmic debts of mutual harm playing tricks. As mentioned before, when we experience even a little suffering, the reason parents suffer so much is not because of any good relationship, but rather very bad relationships. Those who are now our enemies are the same. In past lifetimes, there's no one among them who hasn't been our parent. Take the present time. Although we view them as irreconcilable enemies, they may not necessarily be completely harmful to us. Some people we consider to be completely irreconcilable enemies. Actually, if we examine carefully with wisdom, they may not necessarily be truly harmful to us. Although we view them as hateful enemies, the other party may not view us as hateful enemies. Even if they do view us as enemies, they may lack the ability to harm us. Such situations occur frequently in our daily lives. They happen all the time. We consider them hateful enemies, but they don't view us that way. Perhaps even if they do view us that way, they lack the ability or willingness to harm us. Such situations exist too. If they don't cause harm, then on what basis do you consider them your hateful enemy? So if we truly think about these principles carefully, the relationships between friends and enemies become easy to understand. There's no need to be especially attached to relatives or reject enemies. Moreover, it's possible that through enemies' harmful actions, our reputation might temporarily increase greatly. Also, through the harm these hateful ones bring us, as Venerable Longchenpa teaches in The Precious Treasury of Pith Instructions, we might encounter the true Dharma and achieve ultimate happiness. Such stories are very numerous in this world. Or, from another perspective, if we use various methods to cater to their preferences and speak gentle, warm words, these hateful enemies can also become compatible loved ones. This isn't very difficult. If we try everything possible to get close to them, becoming their closest friends isn't really that hard. Conversely, among those we now consider loved ones, there are many cases of children deceiving or even harming their parents. In today's news, there are many cases of children harming their parents, even stealing all family property. Such phenomena are quite common. moreover, colluding with opposing enemies to jointly seize family property and causing conflicts. Such cases are not few. If children have harmonious relationships with parents, when children experience suffering or unhappiness, parents are sadder than if such things happen to themselves. For these loved ones, children and descendants, one accumulates what can be called towering sins that will inevitably lead to hell. We all know that for family members and loved ones, many people truly create very frightening karma. Worldly people create various sins for their children and fall into the 3 lower realms to suffer long. This should be taught in Sutra of Contemplation of the Mind Ground. Worldly people create various sins for their children and descendants, their loved ones. Finally, they fall into the 3 lower realms, experiencing long-term boundless suffering. Falling into hell is extremely pitiful. Although they hope to practice the true Dharma in their hearts, they are constantly dragged down and burdened by them. Either parents can't bear to part with children, or children can't abandon parents. Both sides remain reluctant to part, thus delaying Dharma practice and missing good opportunities. When together with parents, parents can't bear to part with themselves, and they can't bear to part with parents and children. In this brief life, there's no way to practice. So, in our current practice, the greatest obstacles sometimes are indeed not hateful enemies, but become ourselves. Many people should be able to understand this from their life experiences, because loved ones destroy all our most meaningful Dharma practice. So why did Bodhisattva Shantideva also teach in the way of the Bodhisattva? Impermanent loved ones also destroy the eternally constant Dharma. These impermanent loved ones destroy our eternal nirvana and true practice of liberation. Through their power, they destroy us and lead us into lower realms. So, sometimes our special attachment to loved ones is indeed an upside-down way of thinking. This must be clearly understood. From the perspective of future lives, it's the same. Those we now consider enemies will become our blood relatives in the future, while loved ones will be reborn as deeply hateful enemies. These are uncertain, hard to say from the perspective of future lives. Perhaps in my next life I'll become his enemy and he'll become my enemy. My hateful enemy in the next life will become my dearest relative. So in the flow of samsara, there are various extremely rare stories, so grasping as real the momentary appearances of friends and enemies in this present life, harboring attachment and hatred while accumulating negative karma, makes oneself a stone that falls into lower realms. If we truly create especially grave sins due to temporary friends and enemies, we ourselves become the greatest boulder that can never be extracted from samsara or the lower realms. We know that if an especially large boulder is thrown into river water, it will always sink to the bottom and can never come up. What necessity is there for doing this? We must start with ourselves, thinking of all boundless sentient beings as parents and children, like the past noble ones and great masters, as described in the biographies of predecessors with true realization. Viewing all friends and enemies with equality is especially important. Especially when we often read biographies of predecessors, great masters with excellent practice, we should also understand. Of course, ordinary worldly people generally can't understand this. We're very clear about this point. Worldly people feel there are certain boundaries between their relatives and hateful enemies. This is their worldly view. When they're in an upside-down state, we must also acknowledge this. But in our own practice process, we must consider this well. Especially the prerequisite for cultivating great compassionate bodhicitta is equality between friends and enemies. Without equality between friends and enemies, it's impossible to generate great compassion for all boundless beings. Without great compassion arising, how can bodhicitta arise? So sometimes anyone can talk about bodhicitta, generate more bodhicitta. Some people even sing, "Guru, please generate more bodhicitta." This covers our previous practice discussion. Now for the specific cultivation methods. The specific cultivation of immeasurable equanimity is very important. When we truly want to practice, we begin cultivating according to the text below. Contemplate the above principles repeatedly through thinking and visualization. How to practice? Everyone must practice. when visualizing, first use various methods to work hard on those objects you extremely dislike and toward which you always generate anger. Practice not being angry or wrathful, training your mind through every possible means. When your mind can completely see them as neutral people who bring neither benefit nor harm, then continue visualizing. First, toward those with whom you have particularly bad relationships, and toward whom you often generate hatred, try every means, as we discussed before, repeatedly contemplate what is the relationship between hateful enemies and myself when slowly visualizing this way. Finally, you won't generate the mind of hateful enemy toward them, just like neutral people who bring me neither benefit nor harm. Next, continue visualizing that these neutral people, since beginningless time through countless lifetimes, have all countless times been our parents, exactly the same as our birth parents in this life. Before generating such equal loving kindness toward them, you must repeatedly practice visualization. First transform hateful enemies into neutral people, then see neutral people as exactly the same as our parents in this life. Before this, strictly speaking, practice repeatedly. If you truly cannot generate this, generating even a part can be called a kind of similar immeasurable equanimity. This is very important. Otherwise, I've encountered many Dzogchen practitioners who are particularly poor at cultivating bodhicitta toward all beings. They constantly speak of states of luminosity with wide open eyes, but the foundation of luminous states, bodhicitta and immeasurable equanimity, they absolutely don't have. Their treatment and view of sentient beings is very poor. So, among all our most fundamental Mahayana practices, we must first practice starting with equanimity. Finally, whether they are relatives, enemies, or neutral people, for all sentient beings generate compassionate feelings no different from those toward present life parents. Before generating such equanimity, you must repeatedly practice visualization. Finally, all beings, whether high, middle, or low, whether they have good or bad relationships with you, should be seen as exactly the same as this life's parents. Before this arises, you must continuously practice. Some ask, how much should I practice? Actually, we can surely never finish practicing bodhicitta in one lifetime. We must always practice. You can't say, please set a time for me. About how many days should I practice bodhicitta? Please tell me quickly. How could there be such a thing? Look, it's already explained here. When can you generate such a state? Before that, you must practice. Keep practicing. Truly, practice isn't about a guru saying something like, that's good. Your head is all shiny, so there should be no problem. Bodhicitta has already arisen. It's not like that. When the guru is happy, immediately saying something nice to you, it's not like that. You should look at this text yourself and see what the true lineage masters are teaching us. Keep practicing. Practice repeatedly until it arises. If you haven't reached this state and simply feel neither compassion nor hatred toward any friends or enemies, maintaining just a bland mentality, this is called ignorant indifference that brings neither benefit nor harm. This isn't genuine. Venerable Longchenpa, in Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, also repeatedly emphasizes, some people are indifferent to benefit and harm, thinking, I've probably cultivated immeasurable equanimity very well. When parents die, it doesn't matter. When enemies die, it doesn't matter either. Such people don't have a high realization. It's because you're too poor as a person. It's nothing special. Like a stone, you've never cared about friends or enemies. Such people, Mifam Rinpoche, in The Way of Living, also severely criticizes, calling them shameless ones and so forth. He has refuted them with many terms. So such people have a particularly ignorant kind of equanimity. It cannot represent true immeasurable equanimity. True immeasurable equanimity is like the giving of great sages. How do great sages give? When great sages host guests or distribute charity toward noble and lowly, strong and weak, virtuous and evil, high and middle, all people without difference, treating all equally, giving equally. Generally, when sages give, they don't look at people's status at all. Whatever they have, they distribute equally among everyone. Similarly, we too must treat all beings under heaven as equal objects of great compassion. Before generating such certainty, we should continue training again and again, always training this way. Finally, toward true bodhicitta, that is, when our immeasurable equanimity develops, all merits will also develop. Always treating loved and unloved, good friends and enemies equally, having achieved equanimity, the tree of merit grows. This is taught in Prophecy of Kshemavati Sutra. Always achieving equality between loved and unloved, good friends and enemies. When you achieve equanimity, the tree of true merit and wisdom will grow. Before we achieve this, we must train our minds again and again. So we hope that each person this time won't leave bodhicitta at the level of words or text, but must genuinely practice it themselves. If you haven't succeeded in cultivation, then other merits will truly be very distant for you. You must start by cultivating equanimity from immeasurable equanimity. Once you achieve equanimity toward self and others, loved and unloved, then your merit will increase day and night. Even when you're sometimes careless, even when you're sometimes in a scattered state, the tree of merit in your mind stream will grow day by day. So the key is to start practice with immeasurable equanimity. May all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and lineage masters bless each of us to generate in our mind streams as early as possible, in the fastest time, genuine, immeasurable equanimity, not ignorant indifference. With ignorant indifference, everything doesn't matter, but that's not good. When true immeasurable equanimity arises, then truly in your life, like an elder watching children's games, when many things happen around you, you won't be distressed, you won't be overly joyful, you should know the whole truth of samsara. Good. Today we'll stop here.
Om